Imagine a place deep in the heart of Lahore, Pakistan. A market that's been there for centuries, just buzzing with life, full of history. Now, picture it gone, just erased in a single night. This is the story of what was left behind in the dust. For God's sake, don't build your palaces on our bones. I mean, that wasn't just a shout into the void. It was a desperate plea from people who are watching their entire world just crumble around them. A plea that now just hangs over the rubble of what used to be a vibrant historic landmark.
So what really happened here? Let's, peel back the layers together. We're going to piece together what went down on that night, take a hard look at the official story, and try to understand the true, absolutely staggering human costs of a decision that really just shattered thousands of lives.
Okay, so let's just start with the cold, hard fact of it. The demolition, it was sudden, it was total, and for the community, it must have felt like the end of the world. I want you to just try and imagine that for a second. You go to bed one night, and the next morning, the place where you've poured your entire life's work, the same place your father and probably your grandfather worked, is just a pile of debris. This wasn't some bad dream. This was their new reality.
But why? You gotta ask, how could something like this even happen? Well, there's always an official story, right? Let's take a look at what the government had to say about it.
Now this right here is what I find so interesting, the language. On one side, you've got these very clinical, bureaucratic terms, encroachment zone, public welfare. But on the other side, you have the human reality, a historic market, livelihoods completely destroyed, and just a deeply, deeply painful experience for a whole community.
The whole thing was justified under something called the Leher Project, which is this big government development plan. The market was basically labeled an illegal encroachment, an obstacle in the way of progress. But the question that just hangs in the air is, progress for who?
Because this isn't a story about buildings and rubble. It's about the lives, both human and animal, that were just shattered in the process. Let's really look at the true cost.
Journalists who were there on the ground reported a really heart-wrenching detail. The demolition was so sudden, there was just no time to save the animals. Hundreds of birds and cats, the very soul of the market, were reportedly buried alive.
And this quote, wow, it just captures the crushing financial blow.
I mean, can you imagine dedicating decades to building a small business just to see your entire life savings completely wiped out in a matter of hours? That was the reality for so many people.
And look, this wasn't just a few dozen shops. The bird market was a thriving economic ecosystem. Yeah, hundreds of people worked there directly, but thousands more. The suppliers, the transporters, their families, they all relied on it to make a living. The ripple effects of its destruction are just impossible to measure.
Just take a second and really think about that. A place that's central to your community, a hub of local business, just erased. With no real warning, no discussion, how would you feel?
And this all leads to a really crucial question. It's not just about what was done, but how it was done. Was this justice, or was it something else entirely?
So let's ask some of the hard questions. Was an overnight demolition really the only option for a market with such deep historical and cultural roots?
Sources on the ground say the community got only a single notice, just one, before their livelihoods were completely destroyed. Does that sound anything like due process to you?
Which brings us to the ultimate question, right? When you think about the loss of life, both animal and livelihood, can an action like this ever be considered ethical or humane, regardless of its legal standing?
And here's the real heart of the matter. Even if, technically, the market was an encroachment, the law is supposed to be a tool for justice, not just for punishment. Did this action serve justice, or did it just serve an agenda?
Now, it's easy to criticize, but what's the alternative? The source material doesn't just point out the problem, it also suggests a path forward, a more compassionate way to handle things.
First, let's be super clear about what's at stake here. This isn't just about one market. The fear is a domino effect. Mass unemployment, a huge economic burden, a potential rise in desperation and crime, and of course a complete breakdown of public trust. That is the downward spiral that needs to be avoided.
So what's the alternative? Well, it's about finding a balance. It's about providing new spaces, like they were promised. It's about offering immediate financial help. It's about making sure that protecting heritage is a non-negotiable part of any development. And it's about making a firm commitment, never again.
Ultimately, the story of Lahore's bird market leaves us with this powerful thought.
If progress requires destroying the lives of the most vulnerable people, then we really have to ask ourselves if it's progress at all. Change really does begin with awareness. By sharing this story, you can help make sure that the voices of the people from Lahore's bird market are not forgotten. Thank you so much for listening.